Now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in Emmanuel Azikin, a columnist and a former Vanguard political editor. Good morning, Emmanuel, and welcome.
Morning.
Good morning, welcome to Daybreak, and thank you for joining us. Now we're going to start with This Day newspaper, the newspaper of record. Can we get it on? Well, what we have in the window there is CDS Musa rallies stakeholders to achieve Tinubu's 2.5 million barrels per day target. The rider says that NNPCL lauds security agencies for sustained growth in the oil industry. Well, Mr. Ezekiel?
Well, the meeting between the CDS and the stakeholders in the oil industry was a welcome development aimed at boosting oil production in the Niger Delta. It is interesting that our oil production has lagged seriously in the last few years. We are not meeting OPEC quota, which is far from our expectations for a country that needs to boost its economy, especially as oil seems to be a major source of foreign exchange. And that's why it will interest you that I think a week or two ago, the president had to bring in stakeholders from the Ogoni area so that oil production in Ogoni area can be ramped up, can resume, I mean.
Yeah.
300,000, I just want to stress the point that 300,000 barrels per day is locked down in Ogoni land. But my take is that why the government is interested in boosting oil production in the Niger Delta, we do not seem to see a corresponding interest in restoring peace, especially political peace in that region. I thought that when he brought in the Ogoni leaders, that they should have used that opportunity to settle the lingering crisis in Rivers State, which would have been an opportunity, which will also help them towards the goal of boosting or resuming oil production in that region.
Yes, I mean, we were talking about Ogoni in particular. I think it was just yesterday, and talking about the environmental, degradation in the area, talking about socioeconomic outcomes for people in the area, beyond the political peace for the elephants who are fighting and for the violence that might come out of that. We also need to talk about the outcomes for the people who are living there, the livelihoods there for people who are trying to fish and farm. If their environments are being polluted, then they're suffering from long-term damage. But let's move on to the next story, which is a story that we have taken this morning and that we have to talk about. I know Yolanda has a lot to say on this, but right above the masthead on This Day newspapers, Trump: U.S. will take over Gaza, develop and own it.
I don't even know what to say with this because it is such a preposterous headline. And it's also quite, let me find the right word. Let's call it injurious. It's an injurious headline, and it's very insensitive of what has been going on to, what was it that he called it? The
Riviera.
The Riviera of the Middle East.
Yes, he said he would turn it to the Riviera of the Middle East.
It was some kind of entertainment and holiday destination. So just move
you.
out all the Palestinians because
Absolutely.
the place has been devastated. Resettle them, elsewhere, and then of course the U.S. takes over the territory and then develops it into some sort of another kind of Las Vegas.
It's actually very frightening and scary for somebody to put a pink bow over ethnic cleansing, because that is
right.
exactly what this is. It's ethnic cleansing. We're talking about the forced removal of an ethnic group from an area by a stronger, more powerful group. The Israelis are using U.S. military weapons in this war against Hamas. They have ravaged northern Gaza, and you're saying that, it is because it is ravaged that they should now be moved. It is ravaged not of their own doing. They did not bomb their houses to dust. That was the responsibility of another government. And these are people whose rights have been continuously continuously infringed upon.
Absolutely.
It's scary for us to be in a place where the president of one of the most powerful countries in the world is talking about ethnic cleansing to create
as if it
beachfront.
is a as if it's a resort. I want to ask a question, Mr. Emmanuel Ezekiel.
Yes.
Do you think that any of the governments around the world are going to step in and do anything about this? Do you think anyone is brave enough to stand against Trump?
Well, I would say that I agree with you that it's a very insensitive headline.
Absolutely.
But I think that's the way Trump is going about. You remember what he said about Canada. I was shocked with his decision to impose sanctions on Canada. Canada is just like America.
Yes.
You know, you can residents can interchange and visit each other. But I saw that his decision helped to bring down. You know, Trump wrote a book, The Art of the Deal. I saw him making a deal out of that. And what is happening in the Middle East? You remember that the last efforts towards peace in the Middle East were initiated, concrete efforts were initiated by Trump when he was in government, the Abraham Accords. And through that accord, he was able to get Qatar, UAE, to restore relationship with Israel. And also, Saudi Arabia was about entering into a formal restoration of ties with Israel by the time Hamas operative struck at Israel on October 7, 2023. Now, whatever we may say, I do not think that Trump has it as a concrete agenda to empty Palestine or to empty that region. I just think it as an act of making a deal, that whatever he offers, that that the other parties to the deal will come towards a negotiation. I do not really see any government around. But I'll also say, if I may add, that the war that was instigated by Hamas on October 7, 2023, that it was what truncated the peace deal that was ongoing, the Abraham Accords. A number of the Middle East countries had tried to say, we're about making peace with Israel. And now, what do you have now in the Middle East? You would no longer hear of the Middle East question. It's a long time we had that phrase, Middle East question. It's now Palestine question, the Palestine crisis. People are no longer, the Middle East, most of the Middle East countries have left Palestine behind. They are independently forging ties with Israel. They are moving ahead. So the Palestinians have been seemingly abandoned. So I think whatever Trump is bringing, we should look beyond the messenger. Let us interrogate him. What is he really up to? I do not see him emptying Palestine. Never, it cannot be done. But he probably has an idea of bringing peace towards that region. And as I said earlier, President Biden did not make any measurable attempt at restoring, in resolving the questions in the Middle East. It was what the initiatives that were conceived by President Trump in his first coming. They were the things that's where we have gone to thus far.
Yes, I think some people disagree on Biden not making any initiatives because he was able to get the ceasefire deal in the end. But let's go to the headline on this day newspaper, which is also the headline on the Tribune, which is bringing it back home. The FEC approves 758 billion naira to clear pension liabilities. OK's 30 million euro concession loan to support students' housing project. 80 billion naira for reconstruction, expansion of Alao Dam in Borno. 1.26 billion for MRI CT scanners at OAU and others. Federal government says US, UK patients now seek medical care in Nigeria. Charles.
Let's look at the issue of pensions, because it's one of the reasons why corruption has been so endemic in the country. People want to steal as much as possible to feather their nests ahead of retirement, because you know what? Retirees these days simply don't get paid. Some of them have, backlogs of pension arrears outstanding. And a lot of times I see these elderly people having to go to some government office in order to be re-documented. They call it, I think, verification. And I just wonder, what is this? Can't you rest after you are retired?
Right.
And then, you know, there are times when some people actually embezzle these pension funds. The solution seemed to have been in the contributory pension scheme, but even that is having its own teething problems. So I think out of all this, that is what should be really applauded. The 758 billion naira bond to offset the pension backlog, so that people can actually look forward to retirement with a measure of confidence and peace. And I guess that will, you know, address other problem of corruption, trying to feather your nest ahead of retirement. As for the students' housing loan, well, I hope that sees the light of the day, because when, you know, lots of money is involved, you have people sharpening their knives and forks ready to feast on it.
Yes.
Well, if I may add to that, to the pension story, what is what's really flowing is that before the enactment of the contributory pension scheme in 2004, we had a defined pension scheme, and because it was, and there were a number of people who flowed over from that defined pension scheme into the contributory pension scheme. And it is remarkable and it's laudable that the Tinubu administration is now addressing the issue, because those who were not provided for in the past scheme, successive governments had probably not addressed that issue adequately. And it is nice and commendable that this administration is now trying to address that scheme. It's been a lingering problem for officer, for many public servants. So the administration must be commended in that regard. My only problem is the issue that they are now going to pile more debt upon our head.
Yeah, but I also want to ask your thoughts, because one of the riders there says that there has been 126 billion naira for MRI and CT scanners at OAU and others. This is, of course, a university where the students were just protesting lack of access to internet for, I think it was 80 days. Sorry, not internet, electricity. And it also says that the FG says that US and UK patients are now seeking medical care in Nigeria. But another story on the Tribune right under says brain drain. Nigerian doctors earn less than cleaners abroad, and that is Afai Babalola. That story is on page 13. So how do you feel about, you know, what we're currently, you know, investing in, considering the story on brain drain and our medical professionals leaving the country?
There is no doubt that there's been a lot of efforts made towards upping our medical facilities in this country, especially in the private sector. You remember that some past leaders, President Olusegun Obasanjo, I think even President Jonathan, used to take their medical checkups in Nigeria, specifically at the National Hospital. Vice President Yemi Osibanjo did his in a private hospital in Lagos. But it is unfortunate that other leaders, despite the assertion by President Buhari and the President Buhari or his wife when they were leaving office, that with the new facilities at the presidential clinic, that our leaders do not need to travel abroad. But it is unfortunate that our leaders have continued, especially in this administration, to seek medical treatments or checkups abroad. So the taste of the pudding is in the eating.
That's
so
right.
We need to see our leaders invest their own health, invest themselves, show an example. So when they do this, other people will come to this country because we have the facilities.
Yeah, thank you. So let's take the Punch newspaper now, because there's a very important story there, and there's
two of them.
There's two very important stories, both the headline. But I think we should start with this picture and the rider to that. DR Congo soldiers, rebels clash, death toll hits over 900. It says, we've been talking, you know, amongst ourselves about the crisis in the DRC and its implications for a broader regional, crisis.
I think what stands out to me the most about this war in the Congo, with these soldiers and many people losing their lives, is, first of all, the death toll is very high, extremely high, and yet it is
That's almost like genocide.
It is not being covered well by the world. The world is not talking about this. Why do African conflicts, African wars often go understated? This is my question. Why do we have images like this, stories like this, where we don't even know the nitty-gritty details? They are not shared as widely as other stories. Meanwhile, if you ask anybody about what's happening in the US or with Trump, everybody has an opinion on what to say, but
or with Sweden,
or the Middle East.
Absolutely.
But did you remember that when the question came up during President Trump's media briefing, he said that's not that it wasn't an appropriate question at that particular period, at that press briefing. You remember there was an African journalist that raised the issue in DRC.
Oh wow.
And so it means that we Africans have a responsibility to ourselves.
Yeah. That's right.
Definitely.
Sorry,
the
Charles.
The second very important story there. No, the crisis in the DRC is something that is really very dear to my heart, as a very painful situation, because the resources, the mineral resources that are being mined, that are fueling this conflict, that are by and large responsible for the fact that this conflict has lasted so long, these minerals are being exported to the West, to America, and to China. The cobalt is necessary for their AI growth, for the chips that they're developing.
The lithium
as well. And you have people, the people in the Congo are dying, whereas people in America are using ChatGPT and enjoying themselves. And so we must never also remove the crisis or the context of this of the crimes that are happening from what is fueling on a geopolitical stage.
I think we should question the Congolese leaders themselves. I mean, they should be interrogated, because they are the ones probably doing these deals with the foreign interests that are fueling the crisis in their country.
This is a rebel movement as well.
If there are no internal interests, then I am not sure. I'm sure rather that the foreign interference wouldn't be that much, but like I said, Africa also has to rally around the DRC. Remember when this was the situation in Sierra Leone and Liberia, where diamonds were being mined. There was a moratorium, a global moratorium on blood diamonds. I think we should also have a situation like that, where there should be a moratorium on illegal mining of the.
But what can you? But what can you? Because DRC has virtually all the best, all the resources, minerals.
It
has oil, it has gas, it has lithium,
yes,
and diamond, and all that.
Yes,
it's unfortunate the Rwandanese president, the president of Rwanda, should be called to question. Everybody is keeping quiet, and he is.
Well, he's been asked. He recently said he spoke to the CNN, and he denied Rwandan boots were on the ground in the DRC. However, he has been questioned by the UN, and they are calling for sanctions, even at the UN Security Council meeting, where the representative for the DRC challenged Rwanda and Rwanda's role in the crisis. But Charles, you did say something interesting here, and it reminded me of another article in the newspapers today in this day. It says, Oshomole, no foreigner can steal Nigeria's solid mineral resources without local connivance.
Absolutely.
Correct.
But I think
beautiful connection there.
Yeah. But I think maybe if we should stay on the punch, because we do need to talk about another stage in this saga.
Right.
Marketers may dump NNPCL as price war with Dangote rages. The writer there says, dealers adopt MRS logo to access cheaper Dangote petrol. Consider NNPCL franchise suspension.
Okay, that's me.
Yes.
It's quite interesting, and that's what brings about the matter of, that's when the matter of competition becomes interesting. Economists in Nigeria must be having economists in Nigeria who had for long argued for competition in the market, in the oil market, will be laughing at this time, and we are now seeing the reality. But fortunately, we will say that the NNPCL is supposed to be a state enterprise. And not just being a state enterprise, it's an enterprise that claims to be a commercial entity. Now, NNPCL must be allowed to thrive as a commercial entity. It must, I believe, it has to cut cost. It has to manage itself like any commercial company for it to survive, because the market forces are now compelling the market and compelling motorists to make their options on where to buy. Because if NNPCL is selling fuel at a higher cost than Dangote, the NNPCL will itself may become broke. So, and that's where the issue of the matter of removing subsidy from the company as a whole, not subsidy not subsidy in oil, but the company itself from being subsidized. The company should be allowed to trade as an independent commercial entity.
Thank you. Now, as we round up, I just want to touch ever so briefly on one of the international stories making headlines across. From the Daily Express, we have evidence doesn't support murder of any babies. Same headline with the I newspaper. Medical experts question Lucy Letby murder convictions as legal teams plan new bid to clear her. And the headline appears as well on the Times and many other international newspapers. Now, for those who are not in the know, Lucy Letby was a nurse who was convicted of killing babies by injecting air into their bloodstream. And so she was, besides the 6 that she was found guilty of murdering, it says that there was an attempted 6 as well that she tried to kill. And I don't know what happened there, but now there's a lot of controversies surrounding the case. From a legal perspective, Adesua, can you give us something?
Well,
Yes,
I wouldn't speak on this from a legal perspective. I would just, in terms of legal perspective, if she was convicted, if they found evidence that they believe, casts doubt on that, and they have an appeal process, then they can appeal and we'll see this new evidence. But I remember this case very well, and I also remember how she presented, in court, which was very lack of emotional, and it's also something to, that they do caution about, that how somebody responds does not necessarily determine whether they're guilty or innocent. She could have been in shock the whole time, or she might just be a guilty, cold-hearted baby killer. I think it's in time that we'll know, right? And we'll see what this new evidence says. But I definitely know that for the parents of the babies, this coming up again will definitely be traumatic. And I believe, thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel Zekem, for joining us this morning on Daybreak. I believe that's all the time we have for you this morning. I am Adesua Giwa-Osage.
I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.